these people get obviously there are a million interviews now. So it's very hard to stand out. So I think you want to be very professional in your presentation. Very briefly mention your credentials. I've had these people, a few notable people, and then talk about what's in it for them.
What's going on, guys? It's your boy Tom Talk Trash, and stand back for another video. This time I'm joined by, and he asked me to introduce him by this, the world's sexiest man in his own opinion. I'm joined by Jim Valley from the Wrestling Observer. So welcome to the show.
Did not say that. You chose to do it, and I don't blame
you. Yeah, fair enough.
You were asking me how I wanted to be introduced. I'm like, I don't care. Whatever you want to say. Doesn't matter. I'm not much into formalities.
Fair enough, my friend. So if we take this back to the very beginning of your journey, where do you first discover wrestling as an overall fan?
Well, my dad passed away when I was very young.
Okay.
And my stepfather was a good guy, a really good guy. He was originally from Mexico. And he would watch Portland wrestling every Saturday night on Channel 12 and in Portland. And I grew up halfway in between Seattle and Portland. Like my town is 90 miles to Portland, 90 miles to Seattle. And so we got both Seattle and Portland stations. So, back then, you had one or two televisions in the house. And so, we'd watch Portland wrestling.
So is this like, for people that are in the UK or the rest of the world, was this like the Portland independent scene?
Right, it was a territory.
Oh, right, the territories. I get you now.
Right. This would be Don Owen out of Portland. Don Owen, one of the original members of the National Wrestling Alliance. His father was a promoter, and he took over at a very young age. So he ran Portland, Oregon, at times Washington, going up into Seattle, even Idaho at times. Not very often, but so this is Don Owen and the infamous Portland Sports Arena, which was a converted bowling alley.
Wow.
So if you've ever been to a bowling alley, not known for their high ceilings.
No.
And so the ring, imagine you take out the lanes to a bowling alley.
Okay.
You step down from the concessions down into where the lanes are.
Okay.
Sort of the center lanes, that would be where the ring is.
Oh, wow.
Where the pins are, that would be where you'd have bleachers. And then obviously you'd have ringside areas. So getting back to it, they'd have the ring there, and like Dutch Savage, who was a tall man, probably 6'3", you'd give him a back body drop, and sometimes his feet would hit the lights.
I can imagine.
So anyway, so we would watch Portland wrestling. So I remember, my earliest favorite was probably Jimmy Snuka. Jimmy Snuka had the big hair and all the muscles, and he would do leapfrogs, the big dive off of the top rope. He was very, very exciting for the time. Sort of almost like a jacked up and even bigger Rey Mysterio. Because he would do high flying moves for the era, but he was also a strong man. Jesse Ventura was also on the show, I remember. And then there were some other people who were Northwest legends. Lonnie Main, who died not long after I started watching in a car
Oh,
accident.
oh
But
wow.
Lonnie Main was sort of, that people's champion. He was the man of the people,
Mm.
an everyman, and people loved him. Matter of fact, if you are from Portland and you are, say, in your 60s or older, Lonnie Main and tough Tony Bourne are the two biggest legends. In 1968, they drew 8,000 people to then the brand new Portland Veterans Memorial Coliseum,
Mm.
which was, a very big deal at the time. And tough Tony Bourne was the father of Matt Bourne,
Mm.
doing clown. So,
Ah.
so there's there's a lot of Northwest roots there. I watched wrestling growing up, and those first few years, I enjoyed it, but there was Star Wars and other things that took up my time. But I think it really shifted into high gear when Roddy Piper came to town.
Ah.
And Roddy Piper first came as a bad guy,
Mm.
and it was Roddy Piper. Buddy Rose was the bad guy, along with Ed Wiskowski, later became Colonel De Beers. And those
Ah.
two guys sort of were the bad guys in the territory.
Mm.
And then Roddy Piper came in, and he was a bad guy. And his sidekick was Tim Brooks, Killer Brooks, who's famous being with Texas in the Von Erichs.
Yeah.
And he was sort of a bruiser Brody type character. But true story, they wouldn't let him be Killer Brooks in Portland. So he had to be Bad News Brooks.
Why?
Killer can't be a killer.
Ah. Okay. Yeah, I get you.
So anyway, so Killer Brooks was sort of in that Cowboy Bob Orton ace role
Yeah.
that we saw in WWF. Same act. They'd hug and do sort of the, kind of the pretend, sort of the gay kind of thing to get heat. So Buddy and Piper decided all four of them should get together and be a super team.
Yeah.
Run all the good guys out. They were doing a Survivor Series elimination. And they got their signals crossed, and Killer Brooks, because of Ed Wiskowski's screw up, got eliminated and injured.
Mm.
Piper got mad, and that caused the whole blow up that turned Roddy Piper babyface.
Yeah.
And the rest is history. It was a legendary feud between Rose and Piper, and they did a hair match, which was a huge deal at the time. So I was hooked at that point because of Roddy Piper. And I got some wrestling magazines, kind of opened up my eyes to national stuff. Then, not long after, we got cable TV.
Yeah.
I saw wrestling out of Georgia and WWF. And, then, Vince McMahon Jr., Vincent Kennedy McMahon took over the whole WrestleMania. And, I was off to the races. I've been watching ever since. I never quit. I
Mm.
probably should have, but I didn't.
The memory you have recounting those stories, have you always had such an I can never say this word, encyclopedic knowledge of wrestling?
I don't know. I mean, what happened last week on Raw? I don't know. 2 weeks ago? I don't know. I think it's a friend of mine, Howard Baum. Should have him on the show if you have. Out of Florida. He's a great, great guy. I love him. Anyway, he says that nothing is ever cooler than when you're 10 years old.
Ah, okay.
And I think there's some validity. And I think with a lot of us, if, you know, the best wrestling or our favorite wrestling is right around the time when you're 10 years old.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's true necessarily for me, but, certainly I have those.
I understand what you're saying completely there. So you talked about being hooked and things like that from when you were 10 years old. What would 10 years old Jim think of wrestling now, do you think? And if you had no prior knowledge of wrestling, actually, no. Yeah, what would 10-year-old Jim think of wrestling now, do you think?
Oh, God, 10-year-old Jim would love it. 10-year-old Jim would, we've got hundreds of hours of wrestling. You've got, 10 hours of WWF.
Mm.
You've got, 7 hours or whatever it is of AEW every week. You've got, 2 hours of now soon to be TNA.
Mm.
You've got New Japan and Stardom World, and you can watch Fight TV and your local, I've got Defy here in Seattle. No, 10-year-old Jim would love all the wrestling.
Mm.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, when I was a kid, you could watch, depending on the time, wrestling kind of came and went on television. You could watch, UWF TV, obviously NWA, WCW,
Mm.
sometimes Florida, and there was a ton to watch if you could stay up late or record it. And sometimes I would make it a goal of mine, watch Texas, watch whatever. So no, 10-year-old Jim would be soaking it all in.
What do you think, before we get into your work with the Wrestling Observer and the wrestling media itself, what do you think 10-year-old Jim would think of your work now?
Oh, 10-year-old Jim would love it. I don't know what, so I don't know what today's Jim would feel the same. 10-year-old Jim would love it.
You talked about today's Jim maybe not feeling the same. Where is your current passion for wrestling, if I was to ask you that question?
As we're recording this, when are we playing this in 2026? When is this airing?
2024.
Okay, right, gotcha. Anyway, so as we're recording this in 1937, I went to AEW in Portland. They had Dynamite the other night in Portland, and I had the best time. I mean, Penta wrestled Swerve in a great match. I thought live. I thought Daniel Garcia had his best performance that I've seen against MJF. I thought he looked super aggressive. We got to see Commander and El Hijo de Vikingo against what was it? Christopher Daniels, and was it Matt Sydal or was it Trent? Either
Was
way,
this for Ring of Honor?
It was great. Yeah, it was great. I had the best time watching that show. I just thought it was super fun. Thought the wrestling was good. I didn't really think there was things that were not as good, but there was nothing terrible all night. I had the best time. So, I enjoy just wrestling. So yeah, I'll be honest with you. Look, I enjoy wrestling.
Yeah.
But because I've seen so much wrestling, I am a little weary of the WWE TV format. Just talking about not the talent. Obviously, the talent is exceptional, but I just kind of get tired of the format.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
Well, it's just SmackDown. Okay, they come to the ring, commercial break. They come back to the ring after the commercial break. Here's the match, commercial break. Finish to the match after the commercial. Just give me the match, then commercials.
Right. What is your thoughts on, like, I'll give you an example. Everyone says Roman has the same sort of finish in every match currently. What is your thoughts on that?
Everybody, everybody. I will say this: I don't like that there's so much interference,
Mm,
and the announcers put him over as an all-time great. He's not an all-time. Well, look, not talking about his in kayfabe. In kayfabe, he is not an all-time great. He's a cheater. He's
mm.
the new dirtiest player in the game, with Ric Flair and the Four Horsemen interfering all
I never thought of it that way, but that's a very good point. That is a
right.
very good
And
point.
not, they should be mad at him because he's cheating all the time, cheating Cody Rhodes and Sami Zayn and whomever. You know, they deserve an opportunity. They've got this guy's number, damn it.
Mm.
But all of these guys, the numbers game, whatever you want to call it, keep cheating to win.
I get what you're saying completely there, and I'd never thought of the Four Horsemen comparison, but that's a very good point, actually. So, as we continue, Jim, where does your start in wrestling media start? How do you get involved with the wrestling media side of wrestling?
So I was in radio,
Hmm.
and I used to work at a news radio station in Portland, Oregon. That
Mm.
was last night. Milestone. And so I got a job at a station, and a lot of times you've got to. I always seem to never get the benefit of the doubt. I
Mm.
always seem to start at a lower level and work my way up, and I always did. It was always frustrating.
Mm.
It's like, oh, I got to do this. So anyway, I got a job in Portland at a lower level position and worked my way up, but obviously I wasn't making the most money. So I took a job working part time at a small radio station, which
Mm.
was in a house in another part of town. And I'd go in on Saturday mornings, and they would have brokered programming. People
Mm.
would pay to be on the air, so I would run their board for them, kind of help them do the show because they're not experienced.
I know what you mean, yeah.
So one of the shows was the people who owned the radio station took over and bought that incarnation of Portland wrestling. It was
Ah,
years removed from Dono, but it was basically in India.
okay.
And so they were running shows. They had a couple of hours of um, programming they dedicated to wrestling. Well, they had some people doing a wrestling show who were inexperienced.
Ah, I see what you're saying, yeah.
So anyway, I was running their board, and look, it drove me crazy, but I did my job. I didn't say anything, kept my mouth shut. I just ran the board. Oh, I wanted to say,
As a wrestling fan, what were some of the mistakes you saw them making?
we'll get to that.
Okay.
So, but it was like, it's not my job, even though I know more than all of these people. It's not my job.
Mm.
Anyway, one day someone calls in and they asked, what? Okay, so this is 1999.
Okay.
We're we're peak attitude here.
Mm.
Wrestling's been on fire for years now.
Mm.
Someone calls in and asks, what does Austin 316?
Ooh.
And these people don't know. And I'm just like, oh my God. And they go, Jim, do you know? And that was my opening. And so I just started talking.
Mm.
And we got done with the show. By the way, Austin 316 means I just kicked your ass.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Anyway, they didn't know that, which was dumbfounding. So we get off the air, and the owners of the station go, you sounded great. I want you on the show next week.
Mm.
You're the new co-host.
Okay.
They didn't show up the next week, and it just became my show.
Oh, wow.
So I took over the show, and so this was also the height of wrestling books. Everybody was writing.
Well,
So
like
what I did,
autobiography sort of thing.
what I did was I took my job at the big radio station, and I made calls to all of these publishers and got interviews with all the wrestlers.
Mm.
I didn't say which station it was, and I put them all on the small station. So honestly, I've got tapes. I interviewed everybody.
Mm.
I'm on the little tiny radio station. I've got Triple H, I've got China, and I've got the Road. I've got Mick Foley a bunch of times, and I've just got a ton of wrestlers.
Mm.
Each week, I had a new interview each week. So I was doing shoot interviews on the radio in 1999 to
Mm.
2002-ish, 2002. And it became a pretty popular show. It was very cool. It was a lot of fun. I had a great time.
Mm.
So from there, I kind of connected with Dave and also with Wade Keller, with Bruce Mitchell. Bruce Mitchell and I were friends. And what it was I was friends with Johnny Fairplay from Survivor.
Oh,
He
wow.
moved to Portland before he was on Survivor. So
Mm.
I've known John before he was infamous. And so through those guys, I connected with Bruce, I connected with Wade. So I did a show on the Torch for a while.
Mm.
And then I stopped doing the Torch, and I was doing. Oh, here's what happened. I went to Japan in 2007,
Mm.
and in 2007, it was much harder to know. You know, you knew New Japan and All Japan and Noah, but that was pretty much it. I wanted to find a show to watch. I wanted to go see a live event, but I didn't know how. So I emailed Dave Meltzer. Dave put me in touch with Fumi Saito. Everybody knows Fumi now, but I didn't know who Fumi was.
Mm.
I met Fumi. We hit it off, had a great time, and he took us to a Pro Wrestling Noah show. Got to see Misawa, which was awesome. But anyway,
That's awesome.
a couple of years later, Fumi wants to do a podcast.
Mm.
And he messages me and goes, Jim, I want to do a podcast with you. I know you. I trust you. You have the background. Can we do a podcast?
Mm.
So I messaged Dave. I messaged Dave about I wanted to do the Portland WrestleCast.
Mm.
Dave said, yeah, come do it on the Observer. And oh, by the way, bring Fumi and Pacific Rim with you.
Oh, wow.
And so we did that. And the people at the Observer liked the Portland WrestleCast.
Mm.
They liked what I did with Fumi. So they offered me weekend, the Wrestling Observer live set.
Mm.
I've been doing it ever since.
So I want to go back for a second, if you don't mind. That's all very cool, but I want to go back for a second. When you were doing the radio show in the 90s about the shoot interviews, what would you sort of piloted this sort of YouTube channel, which is...
No, I didn't buy it. No one, you have to be well known to pioneer. I don't think I'm well.
I think you did.
I was doing it on my own.
You sort of pioneered this sort of YouTube channel, which is, I want to interview someone, I'm going to reach out to them. What would your advice be to someone who might have a channel now that wants to build up their contacts and reach out to people for wrestling news or wrestling interviews in 2024, as it says?
I just think you want to be as professional as possible.
Mm.
I think you want to, try to be just very professional. Try to say that, these people get obviously there are a million interviews now.
Mm,
So it's very hard to stand out. So I think you want to be very professional in your presentation.
mm,
Um, you know, very briefly mention your credentials. I've had these people, a few notable people, um, and then talk about what's in it for them.
mm,
You know, you reach X amount. You're in London. Maybe you're very big in London and they
mm,
want to go. Maybe they're going to London and they're going to do a Q&A, or they're doing an event in London and they want to promote it in London.
mm,
Those type of things. What's in it for them?
mm.
Those type of things. So, whether it's a broad audience or a specific audience, as far as, you know, for you just like I say, using you as an example.
Yeah.
But, that's something to do. Like in your case, if there is, you know, some wrestler coming to London to wrestle,
Mm.
reach out to the promoter and say, hey, you know, why don't we help you get the word out for the show? Can I get Paul London or whomever on the show?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're coming to us. Those
I
type
know.
of things. Yeah.
That's that's very, very cool. So you talked about working at the Observer there and getting the weekend show. Were you an Observer fan before you started working there?
Of course, yeah, definitely.
Mm,
I've got I've got all the respect in the world for Dave.
mm.
I love Dave.
So you talked about there being a fan. How do you separate when you do get that weekend shift? How did you put yourself in that mindset of, okay, we've got to go to work now and be professional? You talked about being professional there. How do you sort of separate the fan from the creator?
I don't.
Okay.
I mean, I mean, I don't. Um, try to be professional, and I try not to be disrespectful to anyone. I mean, unless they like really deserve it, they're a scumbag.
Mm,
But no, I try to be respectful and somewhat constructive in my criticisms and things. But if you're not a fan, why are you doing this? There's
mm,
some shows I hear that I feel like some people do it just for the notoriety. I'm like,
mm.
what notoriety?
We're wrestling fans. Like, you know what I'm saying when I say that, do you?
Well, and look, I'm a guy, you want to be professional, like I said.
Mm,
Same time, you don't want to overdo it.
mm,
You don't want to, I'm not a person who puts on airs. You know, you and I are the same. Everybody's the same. We're all just people.
mm.
So yeah, if you're trying to do it for fame or notoriety, I think, like I said, I think you're in the wrong business.
I know what you're saying completely there. I'd feel like a bit silly if I didn't ask you this question, but have you got any sort of fun Dave Meltzer stories as we look at wrapping this up?
Are we already wrapping up? We have some
Oh,
time.
oh, we have
We haven't
some
got
time.
anything. Yeah,
Okay.
we got some time.
Oh, okay. So as
How's
as
Dave
you
Meltzer? Um, trying to think. Um, Fun. You know, I can't think of anything necessarily fun. I guess we went to Japan. We've gone to Japan twice together.
mm,
And the second time, he brought his kids. And his
okay.
son was a teenager, and his daughter was probably around 10, I think. Maybe he's 10, somewhere around 8.
Mm,
And, his daughter was obviously, she's very shy.
mm.
So she didn't say too much. But just the smiles, the unseen communication and love between them was very sweet.
That's very, very cool. You talked about the unseen things of Dave Meltzer there. What do you think is the most misunderstood thing about Dave Meltzer?
I don't think he's as calculating as people think.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's I think he's just a very honest, straightforward guy. And I think if he makes a mistake, I think it's an honest mistake.
Mm. So you talked about, obviously you work with the creme de la creme when it comes to wrestling media, whether it be Dave Meltzer, Brian Alvarez, and people like that. Who are some up and coming people you might see that you're like, in 10 years, they're going to be doing what I'm doing?
Oh gosh. That's an interesting question
Mm.
because you never know what people are going to do. Sometimes life gets in the way. So even if it doesn't turn out, it doesn't mean, you know, being in wrestling isn't the end all be all.
Mm.
So you want to stress that. I think Andrew Zarian is a nice young man. I think he's
Mm.
I like him a lot. I don't know him well, but he seems very nice. Denise seems nice. Obviously, she grinds a lot. She's got like 15 jobs. I don't know how she
Mm.
does
Yeah.
it. But no, I mean, I guess it's hard to say, I guess is what I'm saying, as far as who's still going to be doing it. Because, you could get married, you could decide to have children, your focus could
Mm.
be somewhere else. So there's, like I said, there's more to life than just this.
I understand what you're saying completely there. So
And to
what
be honest,
is
and let me be honest, I focus a lot on the observer stuff, and that's about it. I'm not, cuming a lot of other stuff.
I understand. So what do you talked about consuming the observer stuff and things like that. What do you do to switch off or even power up when you know you're going to be on camera doing a podcast? What's your prep like to get into that podcasting zone, for lack of a better word?
It's it's easy, but it's hard.
Okay.
What I do is you've got to be in this zone. It's like I sit down to watch wrestling and I'm like, I try to be open.
Mm.
Like, okay, I got to be open. What am I watching? And I like to talk about okay, I'm on Saturday, so I have to talk about SmackDown.
Mm.
I have to talk about Rampage.
Mm.
But after that, if I had my druthers, I wouldn't recap anything.
Mm.
I would just talk about what I want to talk about. You really can't do that. But I like to talk about wider trends. Like, for example, one of my most popular shows and sort of what I'm associated with because of the fame.
Mm.
I did this show a couple of years ago talking about Seth Rollins and other wrestlers that it's always because of the fans.
Yeah.
It's always the fans. And people really picked up on that.
What, like
So I
you
like to
people
be
promos?
right. It's
Mm.
always hashtag because of the fans.
Yeah.
Each and every one of you. And no one ever buys it. No one ever believes it. Doesn't get heat. They always do it. They do it less now. Anyway, I like to talk about trends like that, broader picture things that are happening across the board.
Mm.
So I try to watch, when I watch a show, I try to be open. What am I watching that's like a subtext that
Mm.
maybe isn't as obvious? So I try to be open to those things. You've got to be in the moment, but you can't, it's got to happen naturally. You
Mm.
can't just sit there and go, okay, I'm in the moment.
Mm.
Because that's phony. So it's difficult, but it's easy, if that
And
makes sense.
yeah, I know what you mean. What about to like get yourself like maybe calm to record? Do you have to do anything like that sort of thing?
Now, because my show is I'm on the West Coast here near
Yeah,
Seattle.
yeah.
And so it's at 10 a.m. my time. So to prepare, I get up at like 6. So, because I've got to watch TV, because I got to get some rest, got to be rested. So a lot of times, just I have to record SmackDown and Rampage because I've got to go to bed and get some rest. So I got to get up early, watch the shows, and then have time to, put something on paper.
I understand what
So I'm usually not overly energetic.
Okay. What about after a show? Do you have to do anything to be like, go back into, I love this phrase, but civilian life?
No, I just, I've been on radio since I started college radio in 1988. So I've been
Okay. Yeah, fair enough.
Long time.
So how have you seen like the wrestling media change since 1988 and radio change since 1998 then?
Well, I think, look, everyone can do it. And that's good and that's bad. Everyone can do it. So it opens it up. But at the same time, I think people who start don't realize that, look, if you just crack the mic and you want to say Roman Reigns is the greatest, Roman Reigns sucks, that is your prerogative. However, if you are going to cover Vince McMahon or Tony Khan or whomever, and say you're news media, well, that's different. Being a reporter is different than hosting a show.
Than being a podcast fan, almost.
Right. Opinion versus fact. Fact still doesn't change.
So you talk about there being a podcast fan, a podcast from a fan's perspective or a reporter perspective. When you record, is it from like a fan's perspective or is it from like this is what has been said here?
No, what I do is I do commentary. Wrestling Observer is a show. So I do a show. My job is to entertain and inform. And because I'm on Saturday, it's like I've got this little sandbox that I can play in. So it's like, I've done a lot of different things. Now that you can gamble, when was it AEW? No, it was WWE. Did a partnership with the gaming website.
I know what you're talking about, but I can't remember the name. I'm not going to lie.
I'm sorry, I apologize. Anyway, I did a parody song of Kenny Rogers the Gambler.
Oh.
When Ric Flair had his roast, I did my own roast of Ric Flair with my own jokes. I've done a lot of different things that I think, I don't just crack the mic and start talking. Every show, I've got a plan. And I try to execute that plan to the best of my ability. Do I ad lib sometimes if I'm in the moment and deviate from the plan? Yes, I can. But the point is that I'm not just sitting there. I try to entertain and inform. I've got that hour, and I try to do the best I can with that hour. Whether I succeed or not, that's up to you to decide. But my point is I try to, I'm on Saturday, so I try to be different. I feel like I have to do different things to differentiate myself from a very competitive and crowded market.
So you talked about there doing different things and the fact that also everyone else can do a podcast. So how would you advise people make their podcast different if they were to start one tomorrow?
Well, that's what I'd say. What makes you different? What do you have to say that's not being said? Well, and also look, what are your goals? If you just want to do it as a hobby and to have fun, then God, go have a great time. If you're trying to be a star and monetize it and have, be Joe Rogan or be Brian Alvarez or whatever, what makes you different? What is not being said or being done that you can do?
Mm. I understand what
And
you're
and is there a market?
saying. So you talk about, is there a market for that? What would you say? How do people know in your eyes if, like, because people could just be talking at a bar and think we're really funny, we should start a
Right.
podcast. How do you know the difference between being funny at a bar and then being funny on camera? I hope that makes sense.
Okay. A podcast is it's one-on-one communication. So it is sort of like talking at the bar.
Mm.
However, okay, never mind. If it's all filled with in jokes that you haven't brought people in on, it's going to fail. Bruce Pritchard has got a ton of in jokes that his fans know and repeat all the time. That's good stuff, pal. No, y'all. Whatever. He's got all of these things like you would say at a bar, but he's brought people in on the jokes.
Yeah.
If you can successfully bring your listeners in on these jokes and make them feel like you're a part of it, then that's the battle, man. That's the deal. Then you're successful.
I fully
Does that make
appreciate
sense?
100%, and I fully appreciate what you're saying there. So, as we look at wrapping this up, because like I say, I do want to be respectful of your time, my friend. I just
you can do like 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's why I want to do my wrap up questions, if you don't mind.
Okay.
But before we do, I'm gonna do the most self-indulgent thing ever. What did you enjoy about this? Where can I improve?
You? Well, to let people behind the curtain, we've scheduled this thing like 10 times.
Yeah, I knew that was coming.
So I'm a very nice patient. No,
Yeah.
I just make sure that you can show up.
Yeah, fair enough.
But you seem very nice from what I've seen. I mean, you seem
Fair
very
enough.
nice.
I've really enjoyed chatting with you, my friend. I'm not gonna lie. But as we look at wrapping this up, Jim, we are gonna do we are going to do a segment that I call generic questions. Those of you that have seen my interviews before will know this is where I ask my guest their favorite match, favorite overall pay-per-view card, favorite tag team, favorite wrestler's entrance theme, favorite tag team, and favorite wrestler. Basically, the questions that Jim might be asked on social media. So now he'll have a place to be like, guys, I have answered this. Please go watch this. So, what's your favorite match of all time?
Okay. I'm a very fickle person. This changes all the time. I'm going to be honest with you. As we're recording this, like I said, I just saw Dynamite in I just saw Dynamite at work. I loved Swerve versus Penta. Oh my God. I thought that was awesome. There's a lot of I don't know that I have one favorite, to be honest. Like I said, it's like I'll see a match, I'll go, that was awesome. You know what else was awesome? The Sting match against the Outrunners, because Tony Schiavone mentioned my name.
Oh, I was just going to ask you about that. So, did your social media start blowing up?
That's the greatest match in the history of our sport.
Did your social media start blowing up when Tony Schiavone mentioned you?
Yeah, it was very funny.
So did
Because I
you
said,
know that was going to happen?
no, no, I didn't know. No, that was very funny.
So how do you think that came about and things like that?
Oh, so in 2016,
Mm,
I went to the NWA Charlotte
mm,
fan, and I had done. I was at the Torch at the time,
mm,
and I followed my own advice. I reached out to Greg Price, and I did an interview with Austin Idol,
mm,
and I did an interview with Magnum TA
mm,
on the Torch promoting the Fan Fest.
mm,
So I showed up with the Fan Fest, and I'd gone out and had a fun night with my friends I hadn't seen in a long time that night. So I was probably going to miss the first Q&A, which was with Jeannie Clark,
mm.
Steve Austin's ex-wife, Chris Adams' valet, and Steve Austin valet too. Anyway, and I get a call, I get a text, and it's Greg Price. He's like, "Hey Jim, can you host the Q&A with Jeannie Clark?" And I'm in
Mm.
bed, and I've got like 20 minutes.
Oh no.
Sure, why not? So I come down, I hosted. Jeannie was a sweet woman, loved. So then he goes, "Can you do the next one?" Sure. I ended up doing all six, hosting them on
Okay.
stage.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
the last one was Tony Schiavone.
Mm.
And I'm going to be honest, I was not looking forward to it. And
Why?
I'll tell you, because Tony was such a company guy on Nitro.
Ah.
I expected him to be a company guy on stage.
Mm.
No knock on Tony. He's super professional. I
Mm.
just expected him to be that professional on stage and there'd
Mm.
be nothing to say. Tony was amazing. He
Mm.
was hilarious. He was he was great stories. He was very entertaining. All these things. And he and I hit it off. And this is a true story. We're getting off stage, and I was like, "Tony, you killed it. You should do a podcast."
Mm.
Conrad was in the audience, and that's where they got the idea.
Oh wow.
And it's not me. I just said that. They would have. Don't get me wrong. They would have done it anyway.
But you put it out
And
into the universe, man.
I don't look. No, that was just Forrest Gump, who happened to be. But anyway, I was. But here's the thing. I will say this. Here's another thing as a host.
Mm.
If you do a good show,
Mm.
you will get credit.
Mm.
If your guest is funny, entertaining, newsworthy, whatever, you will get the credit.
Mm.
You don't need to jump in and try to be funny yourself or steal the spotlight. I knew with Tony, one, he's the star. I knew it with all these guys on stage.
Mm.
My job was to do the best interview and make them look the best I could.
Mm.
If I need to be funny to help the situation, that's fine. But I'm not trying to get myself over. If
Mm.
the interview is good, I will get over by proxy.
Mm.
So I knew when to stay out of Tony's way. I knew when to move things along, go back to things, whatever. I knew that's my job, not
Mm.
to go, "Hey everybody, look at me." Anyway, so I helped Tony on stage in that regard.
Mm.
But he was hilarious and funny and all those things on his own.
Mm.
Anyway, it led to Tony's podcast. So I always joke that I'm the one who pulled Tony out of obscurity. I
Mm.
did not, but I just joke at that. I'm even in Tony's book. So anyway, Tony probably saw my tweet about Sting, that he hadn't wrestled in Portland and knew I was there, and so threw it out. He even
Mm.
came and said hi to me after the show. So Tony is the nicest man. I
That's
love, love, love Tony Schiavone.
That's very, very cool, my friend. So, like I say, as we look at wrapping this up,
Yeah,
we are going to
right,
do a segment that I call generic questions. So,
right.
have you got a favorite match? Do you reckon, or do you reckon it's one of those things?
God, I don't know if I have a favorite. Don't. You know what I like? Okay. Um, Halloween Havoc, 1990. Was it the Nasty Boys and the Steiner Brothers?
Mm,
That's a good match.
mm,
Watch that.
fair, fair enough. That's your
No, I
favorite.
don't. I like obscure stuff. I could
Mm,
give you, you know, uh, a WrestleMania main event, but
mm,
it's kind of fun.
yeah.
Go watch something more obscure. It's good.
Talking of obscure, what's your favorite, or what's the most obscure pay-per-view, or your favorite that you can think of?
Favorite pay-per-view. I have a sentimental place for Great American Bash, 1996,
Mm,
where the Outsiders threw Eric Bischoff to the table. I
mm,
thought it built nicely, had some good matches, plus with the whole thing at the end with Mongo. So I thought it had, plus that was a very hot summer with the
mm,
NWO and everything. Is the best pay-per-view? No, but
mm.
it's just kind of sentimental.
Fair dues. What about your favorite wrestler's entrance music?
I do not pay attention
Oh,
to,
okay.
I'll be honest with you, as far as like favorite, um, I used to like when Sting was first a star, he had like this guitar riff
Mm,
before A Man Called Sting, which sucked. Um, Thought that guitar riff, it was sort of Ultimate Warrior. I
mm,
kind of like, I like music that I like entrance music that just goes.
mm, mm,
Judas is cool too. Judas
mm.
is with the crowd singing. That's pretty.
What was that like being in the crowd for Judas?
Oh, it's super fun. Super fun.
Mm, that's very, very cool. And then what about your favorite wrestling tag team?
Road Warriors.
Right off the top
Everybody,
of his head.
everybody grew up in the 80s.
Mm. Then, as we wrap this up, Jim, the biggest generic question, in my opinion, who is your favorite overall wrestler?
I guess it's got to be Piper.
Mm,
Yes, I mean, I kind of followed him through everything. I mean, from Portland to, it was very fun to watch his career, go crazy from Portland to Mid Atlantic, Georgia, to WWF, Hollywood, and WCW, and then to get to know him
mm.
and to be friends with him. And he'd call me up sometimes at 2 a.m. with ideas
Oh,
to
wow.
work. I got to work with him a little bit. He got me my WWF announcer audition, all
Oh,
kinds of
wow.
stuff. Oh
That's
yeah, that's a long story. Why don't we let's do an interview in the next couple of days again? I'll tell you that story.
definitely. Let's make that happen. But as we wrap this up, Jim, the question I end this show on currently is I believe as content creators, people with social media, we're all sort of going to live forever in some sort of very strange way, if you think about the world. So, what is one piece of content you're like, I'd like to be remembered for that? And then what is one that you're like, yuck, please get rid of that?
I like the because of the fans. I
Mm,
think that then I did one. I did a follow up because of the fans. I thought was very creative, where I talked about Seth Rollins was whining about everything, so I talked about what if we put Seth Rollins into other famous moments in wrestling.
mm.
January 1984. Seth Rollins defeats the Iron Sheik to win the WWF title, and thus Sulkamania is born.
Oh, man.
And I talked about Seth Rollins being the leader of DX. I've got 2 words for you: like me. So I thought that was very creative. I guess I would like to be known for my creativity. I'd
Mm,
like to be known for the roast of Ric Flair. I thought was funny. Stuff like that. I did enjoy Uh, my Portland show, I have it, I think, still out there on my SoundCloud. I have an interview with Roddy Piper and Ric Flair together.
Oh,
So
wow.
go find it. It's pretty good.
That's very, very cool, my friend. So as we wrap this up, where can the good people find you, promote yourself, your content, etc.?
I'm on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Jim Valley, Valley. Instagram at Jim_Valley. So I'm also on Threads. It's probably never know when we're leaving X.
Mm.
And then obviously every Saturday, Wrestling Observer, you can go to f4wonline.com, Wrestling Observer. I do Wrestling Observer Saturday, Pacific Rim with Fumi Saito, Portland WrestleCast, which is a lot of fun, which is I interview someone from Portland, but I play clips from Portland TV, so you don't need to know anything. I tell you everything from soup to nuts, so you get what happened on camera and then backstage. So if you like history, you like dressing room stories, fights, all kinds of stuff, crazy road stories. It's all there in the Portland WrestleCast. So you don't need to know anything. Just listen and enjoy.
That's very, very cool, my friend. So obviously I want to say thank you again to Jim for coming on. But if you guys like this, make sure you like.
17th time is the charm.
Yeah, fair. I deserve that. Yeah. So if you guys like this, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Tom Talk Trash on YouTube. Follow me on X at Tom Talk Trash, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye now.